France says it will recognise a Palestinian state, and the UK is under pressure to follow suit. But as Israel continues its war and starvation in Gaza, will this move serve any purpose? Or is it intended to appease Western public opinion that's increasingly sympathetic towards the plight of the Palestinians? This is Inside Story. Hello, welcome to the programme. I'm Adrian Finighan. France says that it's ready to recognise an independent Palestinian state, a move that it calls both necessary and overdue. The announcement comes at a time of growing international outrage against Israel's war on Gaza, with human rights groups and legal experts accusing Israel of committing genocide. Several European countries, including Spain, Ireland and Norway, have already recognised Palestinian statehood, and pressure is mounting on the United Kingdom to do the same. But would any recognition lead to change on the ground? Is it a genuine diplomatic shift or a symbolic gesture aimed at calming growing public anger? And how will France navigate any backlash from Israel and the US? We'll discuss all that with our guests shortly. But first, this report from Victoria Gatenby.
In a world increasingly outraged but still divided on how to stop Israel's genocide in Gaza, France has announced a diplomatic step that it says is long overdue. President Emmanuel Macron says he's ready to formally recognise a Palestinian state, posting on social media. Consistent with its historic commitment to a just and lasting peace in the Middle East, I have decided that France will recognise the state of Palestine. I will make this solemn announcement before the United Nations General Assembly this coming September. Tens of thousands of Palestinians have been killed since Israel's war on Gaza began nearly 22 months ago. The Health Ministry says more than 100 people have starved to death, and the entire population of Gaza, more than 2 million people, are facing severe food and water shortages. Palestinian leaders say recognition by France shows global opinion is shifting.
We thank France for this step, and this is France is fulfilling its moral and legal and diplomatic responsibility toward the state of Palestine. This recognition is important at this time while the Palestinian people are under existential threat by Israel.
France joins more than 140 countries in recognising the state of Palestine, including Spain, Ireland and Norway. But as the first permanent member of the UN Security Council and the first G7 member to do so, analysts say France's move carries significant diplomatic weight. More than 200 British MPs have urged UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer to follow France's lead. At the same time as pressure mounts in the UK, Israel condemned France's decision, calling it, quote, a reward for terror. The United States reiterated its opposition, warning it would do nothing to change the situation on the ground.
Well, he made a statement, France, Macron. His statement doesn't carry any weight. He's a very good guy, I like him, but that statement doesn't carry weight.
Supporters say the landmark move by France won't stop the bombs or create a Palestinian state overnight. But it may, they say, force governments around the world to reconsider how long they can defend the status quo. Victoria Gatenby, Al Jazeera for Inside Story.
Let's bring in our guests. From the French port city of Saint-Malo, we're joined by Jacques Reland, Senior Research Fellow at the Global Policy Institute. From Berlin, we're joined by Ulrich Brueckner, a professor of political science at Stanford University in Berlin. And from London, we're joined by Afif Safieh, a former Palestinian diplomat and a former ambassador to the United Kingdom and United States. Gentlemen, a warm welcome to you all. Let's start with you, Jacques. Is this anything more than a symbolic gesture designed to annoy Israel and appease public opinion in France? What purpose does it serve? How does it help Palestinians?
It is a symbolic gesture, we know, because France is not instrumental in the future of Israel, but it's a sign, it's a signal that France is sending to Israel, saying that what they've been doing is absolutely unacceptable. The fact that what's happening in Gaza is really shaken the population, and it's terrible. The destruction of Gaza, and also what's happening in the West Bank, where settlers are pushing their advantage, conquering territories with the help of Israeli army. So it is a signal to say that Benjamin Netanyahu's vision of the future of Israel, basically as one state, is not shared by France and the majority of the international community. France is attached to the two-state solution, and while we know that basically Bibi Netanyahu wants to get rid of the Palestinians and create as just a vision of one-state solution, and wants to achieve that objective through war acts and even crimes of war, you could say, and war crimes, and therefore something has to stop. It has to stop. Enough is enough. That is the message from France, and hope that maybe it will be shared by a few other important members. Already 148 members have recognized the Palestinian state, but none of the G7 countries have. And France would like his view to be shared by a country like Britain, for example. They can't count on Germany, because Germany still remembers the Shoah and will not do anything to upset Israel.
Okay.
But hoping that it will be is the third member of the Security Council to recognize Palestine, and hope that maybe Britain will join them.
Okay, we'll talk more about Germany in just a moment. Ulrich, Israel called France's move a reward for terror. Can it be so easily brushed off, though, by the Netanyahu government? Is France's recognition of Palestinian statehood by a nation like France, a permanent member of the UN Security Council, the first G7 nation to do so, a concern for Israel?
Well, apparently it is. And Netanyahu feels that although it would be great for the Israeli government to find support from the European Union, it's getting more and more difficult for the Netanyahu government to have the European Union on its side, because more and more countries join the position that what is happening in Gaza is totally unacceptable because it violates international law, it's out of proportion, and it doesn't lead to a solution that everyone wants to see happening, which is basically a two-state solution. It also puts a lot of pressure on Germany, but I guess this is something that we will discuss a little later.
We will indeed. Afif, given that France's move does nothing to stop the bombing, the killing, the starvation, the systematic destruction of Gaza, of what use is recognition of statehood to a people who are being subjected to genocide, forcibly removed from their land, living miserably under occupation?
Well, I believe it's what Macron will be doing in September in the General Assembly is now a symbolic gesture long overdue. But I believe it can be much more than that if it is accompanied by a lucid analysis of the situation and coupled with statesmanship, determination, and perseverance. I believe that showing what should be the finality of any diplomatic endeavor in the future, meaning a two-state solution, meaning the creation of a Palestinian state, is something very laudable. I believe that in the past, the flaw and the shortcoming was that what was adopted was a step-by-step approach towards nowhere. Now, with recognition by 148 countries, many more will be following, it signals that this is the finality that the international community would like to see happen in the Middle East. I believe that since it's the French president who's taking that initiative, his advisors will be well advised to remind him of what General de Gaulle, President de Gaulle, after the 1967 war, made as an initiative, which unfortunately did not take off the ground. It was called then La Concertation à Quatre. De Gaulle in 67, after the 67 war, believed that the four major powers, China was not yet in the Security Council, agree on what is desirable, doable, and possible, and signal to the local belligerent parties what the world expects from them. And unfortunately, that was not the approach that was adopted. And Israel, since much was left to the local belligerent parties to decide and agree upon, Israel was constantly tempted to believe that it can dictate the ceiling of the possible and the permissible, and it was always beneath what was acceptable by the Palestinians.
Okay.
I believe today the international community should become aware that what is acceptable democratically to the Israelis is not acceptable democratically to the Palestinians. And I believe Israel should be made to understand that peace is too important to be left for them to decide upon. Up to now, they were led to believe that if they voted the Israeli citizen, if they voted for labor, they give back 80% of the territory occupied. If they vote for Likud, they might give back 40%. If they vote for Smotrich, we get a knock in the back and be driven onto the periphery of our homeland. No, peace is too important to be left to the Israelis to decide upon. The international community should be signaling to the belligerent parties
Afif,
what the world expects from them.
Okay, let's take it back to Jacques. Jacques, wouldn't it have been far more productive for France to have imposed an arms embargo and trade sanctions against Israel alongside its recognition of Palestinian statehood? Why is France still supplying Israel with arms?
I think that France is not supplying Israel with many arms. Apparently, it counts for only 0.4% of the arms imports of Israel. So you can't say that France is really helping the war effort by Israel. And trade sanctions depend on Europe. And you know that France would like to impose trade sanctions on Israel. That would be a very good step, and it has been proposed by many French people. But we know it will be opposed. You need unanimity. It will be opposed by countries such as Hungary, Slovakia, and probably Germany too. So that's why. So otherwise, yes, trade sanctions would be more important in the short term. But the vision here is the vision of a long term, and to say that really what has been the French position always since General de Gaulle, the two-state solution, well, even though it's still alive, even though it's become more and more difficult to implement, given the fact that West Bank is now occupied by settlers, Gaza has been destroyed, so it's very difficult to imagine the future, but symbolically it's very important, and it's to show really that the war aims, because that's what it is, the war aims of Netanyahu are contrary to international law and also to peace in the region and to even peace for Israel. And that's the thing. Israel has to understand that it's going to make its future far more insecure, carrying on as it does now, which is, absolutely intolerable, and it's damage its own security in the future and creates a very strong level of hatred. So it's time to stop and maybe try to think about a way forward where there's a mutual recognition that Palestine, and already the OLP has recognized the state of Palestine. When Netanyahu says a victory for Hamas, no, because Hamas doesn't recognize the state of Israel and will not. Well, the plan of the French, the idea of the two-state solution, is for a recognition of Israel by Palestine and Arab countries around Israel.
We'll come on to some of the issues that you raised there in just a few moments. But Ulrich, Macron's announcement has possibly opened the door for other G7 nations to follow suit, particularly Germany and the UK. To what extent, though, is that worthless? And unless Germany, Israel's main economic partner within the EU, doing the same. It says it has no intentions of doing so just yet. But for how long? How long can Germany hold out on this?
Well, that's a big question. And independently from who's currently in power in Germany, we have repeatedly stated in Germany that the raison d'etre of German foreign policy is the security and the existence of the State of Israel, which puts governments in an awkward position, because what happens if hunger is used as a weapon against civilians, or if other war crimes are committed? Is that still a support from the German side, and under what conditions? We also haven't seen an initiative by the German government. I attended a conference from an NGO, the Institute for Cultural Diplomacy, in January, while we still had a different government. And that was an initiative by Palestinians and Israelis, because Germany as a government was not initiating anything and rather stepping back and repeating the slogan that this is the raison d'etre, which makes it also extremely difficult for the European Union to play a role, because the EU only matters if it finds a common position. And then no matter if Germany insists on its pro-Israeli position or France moves in the opposite direction, it will become difficult for the European Union to find a common denominator.
Afif, Britain's Prime Minister Keir Starmer also under pressure to follow France's lead. He says he's unequivocal in his support of recognising a Palestinian state, but insists that it must be part of a wider plan which ultimately results in a two-state solution which provides lasting security for Palestinians and Israelis. Is he right?
I believe that Keir Starmer will finally have to adopt the position that corresponds with British public opinion and the sentiments within the Labour Party that is in government and within his own cabinet. I believe that the Labour Party is going to have its annual conference in September, where I know for a fact that the members of the party will signal to Keir Starmer in the most unequivocal manner that British Parliament 11 years ago already adopted a position of recognizing a Palestinian state, and the party was committed, once they arrived in power, to recognize the Palestinian state. So I don't believe he will have much room to maneuver and delay and play protracted diplomacy on that issue. So I believe a French followed by a British recognition is extremely significant. I know that Belgium and Luxembourg, for example, are ready also to follow suit if the French take the initiative. Slovenia has already recognized, in addition to the countries you mentioned. So I believe in Europe today, public opinion is by far more advanced than the position of governments in Europe. The problem we still have is that the American administration up to now is the only dissenting player in the international system vis-à-vis this international consensus. I believe that Trump will be well advised to remember that America is a fascinating society. It's a nation of nations where every country, continent, and culture is represented. And America, the dominant player in the international system today, will be well advised not to align itself on one belligerent party in a regional conflict, because this policy alienates not only all the other players in the region, but offends and alienates and ghettoizes a domestic component of the American national fabric. It wasn't easy for 5 decades to be a Palestinian American, an Arab American, or a Muslim American, and there are 9 million of those. And I think Trump will be aware, should be aware of the changing mood within American public opinion, including within Republican ranks, who are not happy to see American foreign policy in the Middle East to be a subcontract in the Israeli strategy.
We'll come back.
See increasingly Netanyahu as a pyromaniac who has to be checked.
We'll come back to Trump.
That.
We'll come back to Trump and his reaction in just a few moments. But first, Jacques, did Macron feel that he had to act? The new US ambassador to France expressed outrage on X, saying that Macron's decision was a gift to Hamas and a blow to peace. Did Macron feel that he had to protest against Israel's actions? Was he prepared, do you think, for the blowback? Has this impacted upon his and France's credibility?
Yeah, he was prepared. He knew that it would upset Trump. And the reaction of the ambassador is beyond belief. He's saying, he's just arrived. I think he's a member of the Trump family. He's related to the Trump family in some ways. It's this guy is a joke. He even suggested that they move the Palestinian to the Riviera of France and called Riviera Steen as a new state. So how can you take these people seriously? But the problem is that today, the respect for international law has disappeared. Now we are in the world where might is right, or as our friend Netanyahu says, peace through strength. And that's it. It's might is right. It's now the big beast decide without any respect for international law. I don't think they're on the side of the angels. The mood in the world, not just over Palestine. We know that the only countries that really count are the big ones with strong leaders. But public opinion, as your previous correspondent was saying, is really shifting in America. Also, what's happening in Gaza, in Israel, is really so unacceptable that it's, what is happening is totally contrary to not just to international law, but human feelings. It's unacceptable. So maybe at some point reason will prevail, and maybe let's hope that maybe the Americans will move in a certain directions. We don't know. We can't tell with Trump. It's so unpredictable. We don't know what can happen. But yes, the reaction of the United States and of Israel by Macron was expected, even though already that on the 18th he had organized a meeting in the UN with Saudi Arabia to talk about the future for a two-state and the conditions that would be imposed, the disarmament of Hamas, given more power to the Palestinian Authority, and mutual recognition by other Arab countries of the existence of Israel. So these
Jacques,
conditions
you mentioned Jacques,
to come on the table.
You mentioned, Jacques, that the conference at the UN. Ulrich, how will Macron's announcement affect next week's UN conference, which France is co-hosting with Saudi Arabia on the two-state solution, as Jacques said? Will it, at the very least, lend France some credibility that it didn't have previously as co-host? Restore perhaps some faith among Palestinians who've long given up on the West with its talk about values and human rights, but no follow-through?
Well, I doubt whether there is an immediate measurable consequence of this. But on the other hand, when you look at the different discussions that we have within the European Union and how everyone is navel-gazing and thinking that the problems of Europe are also the problems of the rest of the world, there's a growing gap between how the global South sees problems and sees reality and what is happening in the European Union. So the moment single countries or the European Union are moving in a direction that looks like a common denominator, it increases credibility that the European Union has lost in a number of conflicts in recent years.
Afif, Israel argues that French recognition of Palestine will encourage Hamas to hold a harder line in ceasefire negotiations. France, though, insists that announcement, which also called for the demilitarization of Hamas, was not about rewarding Hamas, but rather proving it wrong. France's foreign minister said that Hamas has always rejected the two-state solution. By recognizing Palestine, France is proving this terrorist movement wrong. It's proving the peace camp right against the war camp. That's a direct quote from the foreign minister. Is he right?
I personally believe that the French initiative will rehabilitate the diplomatic avenue that has been ridiculed by the pyromaniac Netanyahu, who has tried to torpedo every possible diplomatic endeavor. On the contrary, it is a response to the expectation of the Palestinian people in their majority, who support a negotiated approach, who have supported the Oslo process in 1993, and have been disillusioned. On the contrary, it's a rehabilitation of the diplomatic avenue, which I fully applaud and support. And I
Sure.
believe that the Israeli reaction was predictable. Au contraire, if I were an Israeli, I would seize that moment for a soul-searching exercise, and I will understand that it's not the Abrahamic Accords that will make Israel secure. Israel's security doesn't come from territorial aggrandizement, but from regional acceptance, and they should be aware we, the Palestinians, are the key for the regional acceptance of Israel. And we have been unreasonably reasonable, and I believe the international community should be aware that we have been unreasonably reasonable. We have aligned ourselves on the preference of the international consensus, which is the two-state solution. Unfortunately, the previous peace process allowed Israel not to withdraw from occupied territories, but to expand its occupation through the elastic growth of settlements. From now on, we need statesmanship from the international community, and I believe France is a country that is fully equipped to play a major role. There is frustration of Europe, who have been delegated for 30 years to be payers and not players. There's frustration, and the French initiative offers an opportunity for Europe again to become a key player in the international system.
Jacques, do you agree with that? President Macron knew that there would be blowback from the United States, from Israel, from much of the French Jewish community. To what extent was this personal for Macron, a bold move perhaps, but ultimately, is it going to lead anywhere?
That's the $60,000 question. Is it going to lead anywhere? Let's hope so. And, it will lead anywhere if also public opinion in Israel acts against Netanyahu's policies. And if American opinion also pushes Trump to encourage Netanyahu to embark on a more diplomatic approach, which would involve the recognition of the Palestinian Authority. And the problem with Mahmoud Abbas is very weak, but needs kind of a new personnel in the Palestinian Authority, and stop the advance of settlers in the West Bank. Because after that, what's left of Palestine? Gaza has been destroyed. The West Bank is being encroached upon more and more by Israelis. So it's time for the security that Israel understands for its security to maybe ask for the acceptance of its existence by its neighbors and embark on a genuine effort towards peace, and that goes through a two-state solution.
All right.
And the ball is not in Macron's camp, is in Israel and the USA's camp.
Jacques, I'm sorry to interrupt you. We're out of time. Many thanks indeed to you all, gentlemen. Jacques Reland, Ulrich Brueckner at Afif, Safieh. And thank you for watching. You can see the programme again at any time by going to the website at aljazeera.com. For further discussion, you can join us at our Facebook page at facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. And of course, you can join the conversation on X. Our handle there at AJ Inside Story. From me, Adrian Finighan, and the team here in Doha. We'll see you again. Bye for now.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.